Welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to cover the glider project. So there's two main parts to this glider project. The first being parts and assembly, and the second being the IDW with an explosion. So right now, we're going to work off of this PDF that is the detail drawing that you're going to do in the second major part of this project. That'll be a separate video. So for right now, we want to take a look at what we need to make. We need to make 5 parts. We need to make a fuselage. We need to make a right wing and a left wing, or wing and wing 2. I would prefer if you call them left and right. We need to make a stabilizer and a tail. And so if we scroll down, we see here that this is sheet 1 of 5. And so if we scroll down, we see what our final assembly is going to look like. So that gives you an idea of what you need to have as far as the assembly goes. And then we have detailed drawings of all of our parts. And so I've already gone ahead and made the fuselage and the tail and the stabilizer. Those are pretty simple parts. I don't think that we need to cover how to make those in depth, but here's your dimensions. We do have something new here called a detail view, detail AA. And a detail view is basically takes a section of a drawing and it enlarges it for clarity. So we can see these dimensions a lot more clearly than if we had to have them in this smaller area here. So what I would like you to do is make the fuselage, the tail, and the stabilizer first. And that's the drawing at page 5 is the tail and the stabilizer. And go ahead and make those and then come back and watch the video on making the wing. Okay, because that's a little more complicated and that's what I want to go over with you specifically. So go ahead, make those parts, pause the video, come back, and we will hop into Inventor and make our wing. Okay, welcome back. Hopefully you got all 3 of your parts made. Now looking at our wing, before we can just start slapping CAD together, we need to kind of take a look at our part and come up with a plan of attack here. So what do we notice about this part? Well, we notice that it's got 2 lines. Each side of the wing, the small side and the large side, have lines at the bottom. And we have 2 arcs here and then another arc here. Now these arcs are concentric, meaning they share the same center point. And our part changes size along a common shape from one side over here to the other side on the left. And so what that should tell us is what kind of a feature we need to make. Remember, when we have a change of size or shape over a distance, it needs to be a what? It needs to be a loft. So we're going to make a loft, and we're going to start out by drawing our right side over here. And so we're going to go to Inventor, and notice I've got my tail, fuselage, and stabilizer down here. So we're going to start a new part. And in this project, I am going to be saving my work. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to find my glider, and I'm going to call this right wing. So I'm going to sketch on my side plane, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a circle that has a diameter of 0.08. So that's double this radius. And then I'm going to draw a line from the quadrant of the bottom 3/4 of an inch over. Again, I'm doing what's easiest first and creating geometry that will allow me to put in this last arc segment. So let's go back and ask ourselves, what do we know about this arc? Well, we know it's got a radius of 1.5. We don't know where the center point is, so we're going to have to use descriptive geometry to determine where it goes. So we know that there's a smooth transition between the arc and this arc here, which makes them tangent. And we know that it ends over here at this 0.75. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a circle with a radius of 1.5 or a diameter of 3. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag, just like we did in the Advanced Ortho 12, I'm going to drag it down about where it needs to be. I'm going to place a tangent constraint between these two circles, and I'm going to place a coincident constraint between this circle and this endpoint. I'm going to trim off this segment as well as this segment, finish my sketch. That's it. We're done with that half. So I'm going to find my side plane, my YZ, and I'm going to drag that over. I believe the wing was length of 3. Whoop, sorry. Here we go. Yep, length of 3. So I'm going to set my work plane to -3 because I want to go towards the left in the X. And I'm going to sketch on this plane. Now, in order to not confuse myself with all this extra geometry, I'm going to pick sketch 1, hold down Control, and pick work plane 1, and right-click visibility and turn that off. So now I'm just left with my center point. So if I look at my left side, I see it says two arcs are tangent to one another, and I have a 0.04 radius and a 1.5 and a radius of 4 on my big arc. So I am going to draw the exact same way that I did the other side, this side, except I'm going to use my new dimensions. So this is 1.5, and then I need a circle with a radius of 8, because this has, I'm sorry, diameter of 8, because this has a radius of 4. And then just the same, I'm going to grab the center point, drag my circle down about where it needs to be, place a tangent constraint between the two circles, and a coincident constraint between the circle and the end point. Trim this, trim that, and we are good to go. I'm going to turn the visibility of sketch 1 back on so I can see it, and then I'm going to place a loft between this sketch and this sketch, and I'm going to hit OK. Now there is my right wing. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go to my folder, and I am going to take right wing, I'm going to copy and paste it. So either Control C, Control V, or right click, copy, and then I can right click paste. We're going to rename this to left wing. Now this is an important point here. Please do not get in the habit of using a program as a file management tool. That's why we have Explorer, which is what this is here. Okay, this is your little folder button down here in Windows 10. Please, please, please use this to manage files. If you go into Inventor, you try to save a copy, you try to do a save as, you start working on the CAD, and all of a sudden you realize, oh no, I forgot to do a save as. So I would highly recommend that you don't use Inventor to manage your files. Use Explorer. Then what I can do is simply double-click left wing, and now I open. I see up at the top of my my file here of my Windows, my Inventor window, that this is left wing. So what I'm going to do here is actually very, very easy to change this over. When I made workplane 1, I set it to a value of -3. How do I get it over here? Hopefully you said I set my positive value, my value positive to 3. And all I had to do was that, and now it popped over. So that's good. We're going to go ahead and save left wing. We're going to go ahead and save right wing. And we're going to start a new assembly. Remember, standard IAM, not a weldment. First part that I'm going to place when I think about this is, what if I had all of these parts sitting in front of me? What part would I grab first? I would grab the fuselage. So I'm going to open that, place it grounded at origin, And there is my fuselage. What part would I add next? Well, the wings have curves. That makes them a little more difficult to work with. So I'm going to place my tail. And now I'm going to think about how do I want to constrain these. And I know that I want the bottom of this skinny face down here to sit on this. I also know that it needs to be centered in the X on the fuselage. And I also know by looking at my PDF that I want this edge here and this edge here to line up. So let's do that first. Let's line up, let's put a mate between this edge and this edge. And remember, when we have two edges that are mated, what does that give us? It gives us a hinge. So this will pivot and it will also move in the X. So let's stop it from pivoting. And that's going to be accomplished with a mate constraint between the bottom of the tail and the top of the fuselage. And now all this should do is slide side to side. So then the big question is, how do I get this centered into this? Well, what I can do is a couple of things. I'm going to go ahead and close these files real quick. Save them. And the reason I'm doing that is that I need to look at these parts while they're in the assembly. If I double click them in the assembly, it'll bring me back to that part down at the bottom tab here. But if they're not open, it's going to let me do it inside of the assembly. So let's take a look at these. And these parts are symmetric. So hopefully I made my extrusions symmetric so that I can use the work plane in each part as a constraint reference. So YZ here and YZ here, I'm going to turn the visibility on of those two planes, and I'm going to look at my top view kind of from an angle. And I can see here that unfortunately, on purpose, I did not extrude these parts symmetric. Back when we started talking about making parts, and I said, if it's symmetric, make it symmetric. This is why. We can use these planes as a constraint reference, but not if they're not symmetric. So I'm going to double click my fuselage, double click my extrusion 1, change that to symmetric, return, and I'm going to do the same thing for my tail. Double click it, double click the extrusion, make it symmetric, hit OK, and return. So if you did not do that, you're going to need to do that when you're working on putting your assembly together. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to constrain these two planes together. Now the question is, will it take a flush or will it give me an error with a flush or a mate? So here it didn't move, and what that tells me is that because of the orientation of this and the way that the planes are facing each other, it needs to be a flush. If I hit OK, it's going to give me an error message. I'm going to edit the relationship, I'm going to change it to a flush, and I'm going to hit OK. Now these two parts are fully constrained, and I can turn the viz off on my work planes. Let's go ahead and place the stabilizer next. And just looking at this right away, I know that I want this to sit on the bottom of this notch. So we're going to constrain this to this. I'm going to drag it out because I also know that I want this to be mated to this edge, this face here. And lastly, I want it to stop moving in the X. And so we're going to go to the stabilizer. We're going to find our YZ plane, at least what should be the YZ plane here. And we're going to notice that that is indeed in the middle. So when I drew this extrusion, it was centered on my plane. Again, if it's symmetric, make it symmetric. If yours isn't, you need to go in and fix it. So either you're going to have to reconstrain the sketch or redo it real quick. I'm going to constrain that plane to the corresponding plane, YZ, on my fuselage. Again, it didn't move, no big deal. Change it to a flush, it's going to snap into place and now be fully constrained. Last two things we need to place are our wings. So let's go ahead and throw those both in real quick. There's the left, there's the right. So looking at these, I'm only going to focus on one. So we'll focus on the left wing for now. And first of all, I know that I want the bottom of this wing to sit on top of my fuselage. So we're going to go ahead and do a mate constraint between those two faces. And now it gets a little trickier. I'm going to constrain the YZ plane to this surface here, and notice how it flipped it. That needs to be a flush. So we'll hit apply, and now the only direction it should move is in the Z. I'm going to constrain this edge, if I spin my model over to this edge, so where that little curve ends at the bottom of the wing, and I'm going to hit apply. Now that side is fully constrained. I'm going to then mate this face to the opposing face of the left wing. I'm going to mate the top of the fuselage to the bottom of the wing. And now I'm covering up my little line, so I'm going to drag my wing section back, and I'm going to mate the two edges together to give me a finished glider. So that's going to do it for the assembly part of this project. Next video, we're going to cover doing the explosion and the IDW. Thanks, and have a great one. We'll see you in the next video.